Harlow came home from chemo and found another woman's shoes by her front door. This is Sienna. She lives here now. Bryce did not look up from his phone. You get it, right? You're sick. His mother was already dragging Harlow's suitcase toward the garage. There's a mattress out there, Debbie said. It'll do. By nightfall, the dying wife slept on concrete. And not one of them ever asked why a lawyer called her every single day. Don't make this ugly, Bryce said. A clean break is kinder. Debbie smoothed new sheets over what used to be Harlow's bed. Grief doesn't change reality, sweetheart. Be grateful you have a roof. Sienna stood in the doorway of the room that used to belong to someone else, smiling at the walls like she already owned them. It's such a beautiful house. It deserves someone who can actually enjoy it. Bryce Halston thought he'd finally cut the deadweight loose. He looked at his wife of 9 years, thin, bald under her scarf, a bruise still yellowing on her arm, and felt nothing. His mother approved. His sister helped pack the boxes. His mistress laughed in the kitchen that used to smell like Harlow's cooking. None of them knew the woman they'd thrown into the cold quietly held everything they were standing on. That night, on the garage floor, Harlow held a sealed envelope. Her father's handwriting on the front. Open it when they show you who they are. She ran her thumb over the seal. She didn't open it yet. She didn't cry, either. 6 years earlier, Harlow believed she'd married a good man. Ambitious, yes, but back then ambition looked like hope on him. She was a pediatric nurse who worked nights holding scared kids, then came home and held Bryce while he talked about the man he wanted to become. She never told him what her family had. Her father made sure of that. Let them love you for you. Walter Kessler used to say, money is a test. Watch who passes. So Harlow lived plain. She clocked in, clocked out. Let Bryce believe he was building their whole life with his own 2 hands. When her father got sick, she left nursing to nurse him instead. She learned his medications by heart. She sat through the nights the pain wouldn't let him sleep. Bryce rarely came. Someone has to keep working, he said. Debbie said it plainer. Nursing is sweet, Harlow, but you'll never really matter. That's fine. Not everyone's meant to. Harlow didn't argue. She held her father's hand until he stopped squeezing back. Before he died, Walter pressed the envelope into her palm. Everything I built is yours now. Keep it quiet a little longer. People show you their real face when they think you have nothing. He smiled, thin and tired. Open this when they show you theirs. Then he was gone. 2 years later came the tiredness. Then the tests. Then the word nobody wants to hear. When Harlow told Bryce, his face didn't fall. It calculated. She saw it happen in real time, and she never forgot it. The chemo came in cycles, and each cycle took a piece of her. The first round put her on the bathroom floor for 2 straight days, the room spinning if she so much as lifted her head. She learned to keep crackers by the bed and a bucket within reach. In week 3, her hair started coming out in the shower, a fistful at a time. She stood under the water and watched it circle the drain. Then she got the clippers and shaved the rest herself, alone, because there was no one in the house who would have held the towel. She didn't make a sound. Her bones ached like they were being pried apart. Some nights, she wore her coat to bed because she was too cold to sleep otherwise, and too sick to lift her head off the pillow to ask for a blanket. Bryce was never there. He was rising. Ridgeline Group had put him on the biggest deal of his career, a merger with Vantage Holdings, the deal that makes a man's name. He came home later every week, and a name kept coming up. Sienna, his assistant. So sharp, he said. So driven. Harlow noticed the small things sick people notice, because sick people have nothing but time. A second phone kept face down on the counter. Perfume on his collar that wasn't hers. A photo from a work dinner. A woman's hand resting on his arm like it had always belonged there. Harlow said nothing. She watched. She had enough money sitting in trust to buy his entire company and fire him before lunch. She didn't. Her father's voice kept her still. Watch who passes. One night, she woke up burning with fever and called for him. He didn't come. Through the wall, she heard his laugh, and a woman's laugh answering it. She got herself a glass of water with shaking hands and got herself back to bed alone. She was learning the true shape of her marriage. It had no room in it for a sick woman. Then came the day they moved Sienna in and put Harlow in the garage. The first week taught her the rest. The mattress was thin over bare concrete. The cold crept up through it into her aching bones at night. She kept the bucket by the door. One bare bulb hung on a string. Through the wall, she could hear her own house being enjoyed without her. Sienna laughing in the kitchen. Music. the clink of glasses that used to be hers. One night, sick and shaking, she went to the inside door for water and saw them through the gap. At her own dining table, candles she'd bought years ago burning low, Bryce pouring wine into her wedding crystal. To the new house, he said. To finally getting rid of the old furniture. Sienna laughed. She might have meant the bedroom set. She might have meant the wife. Debbie raised her glass. To my son finally living the life he deserves. None of them knew Harlow stood 3 feet away in the dark, holding an empty tub, too weak to lift it to the tap. She went back to the mattress. She didn't cry. The next morning she watched from the small garage window as Sienna walked out to the driveway in Harlow's own robe, coffee in hand, stretching in the sun like she'd been born to that house. Bryce came out behind her and kissed the top of her head. It feels right, doesn't it? Sienna said. Like it was always supposed to be ours. It was, Bryce said. Harlow let the curtain fall. Then she called the only number she still trusted. Preston Duke's office was quiet in the way only money makes a room quiet. He didn't look twice at her scarf or the bruise on her arm. He poured her tea and treated her like the most important person in the state, because to him, she was Mrs. Kessler. He inclined his head the way a man bows to someone he serves. I've been waiting a long time for this call. You know what they did to me. I know all of it. His jaw tightened, once. I also know what you are, which none of them do. He slid a folder across the desk. Your father's estate. In full. It's time you saw the number. She opened it, looked at the figure a long moment. That's the total? That's your liquid position alone. It doesn't count the Kessler Trust. And the trust is where this gets interesting. He didn't lecture her. He turned his laptop and let her see it for herself. An ownership chart, the Kessler Trust at the top, a company called Ashcroft Capital beneath it, and under that, in bold, financing partner, Ridgeline, Vantage merger. Harlow went very still. That's Bryce's deal. My money is financing Bryce's deal. Ashcroft holds the paper. Without Ashcroft's approval, the merger he threw you out to chase never closes. It dies. And you control Ashcroft. He let it sit. How much, Preston? The real number. He told her. She didn't blink. They put that, she said quietly, on a garage floor. Do nothing yet, Preston said. Because I'm protecting you. Because you deserve to walk in on your own terms, in the right room. Until then, watch them. Write down what they do. Let them keep showing you who they are. She closed the folder and went home to the garage of Billionaire. That week, Bryce couldn't stop talking about his deal. He even started taking calls in the garage because the signal was better there, pacing right past his sick wife like she was a stack of boxes. You don't get what Ashcroft is, he said into the phone, glowing. Old money. Serious money. The Kessler Trust sits behind them, and nobody even knows who runs it. But if they approve us, I'm made for life. Harlow sat on the mattress 3 feet away and watched her husband worship her own fortune. Whoever holds that trust is the most important person in my world right now, he said. I would get on my knees for them. He hung up and looked at her like furniture. Try not to be sick in here while I'm working, he said, and left. She said nothing. She'd never wanted to laugh and cry at the same moment so badly in her life. He was already on his knees for her. He just didn't know whose feet they were. It happened again 2 days later. Bryce on a call in the yard, window open. If I could get one dinner with the Kessler family, one meeting, I'd give anything. That's the whole game. That's the person who decides my future. The person who decided his future was lying on a garage mattress in her coat, sick from the poison in her veins. She wrote it down in her notebook. Not spite. Patience. The house got crueler as she got sicker. Sienna redecorated. Posted a photo of the stripped bedroom, freshly painted gray, captioned some spaces feel better once the past is removed. Debbie commented, a fresh start for a fresh family. Half of Bryce's co-workers liked it. Harlow screenshotted it from the garage and wrote the date underneath. Then Debbie did something quieter and worse. A letter came from the family insurance company. Harlow had been dropped from the policy. The cancellation form carried a signature, her signature. She had never signed it. She'd been cut from the very insurance paying for her chemo, so she'd cost nothing. So she'd go faster and quieter. She didn't confront anyone. She photographed the form and sent it to Preston. That's not cruelty anymore, he wrote back. That's forgery. That's a crime. Keep the original safe. She underlined it in her notebook. A crime. Days later, at treatment, a nurse she used to work beside took her hand in the waiting room. Sit down, honey. Have you told your husband? Told him what? You're pregnant, Harlow. Early. But you are. The floor tilted. Pregnant, sick, sleeping in a garage, married to a man who'd forged her name to let her die faster. She didn't tell Bryce. But someone was watching her more closely than she knew. 2 days later, a man in a suit knocked on the garage door and handed her a legal envelope. Bryce was filing for divorce and for sole custody of the unborn baby, calling her terminally ill and unfit to raise a child. He wanted the house. He wanted the baby before it had even drawn breath. Harlow read it twice. Then she saw the shape underneath it, and it stole the air from her lungs. Bryce wasn't clever enough for this on his own. Someone had aimed him like a gun. She called Preston. Her voice shook exactly once. He's trying to take my baby. Ask who benefits if you're declared unfit, Preston said. Ask who's been reading his paperwork over his shoulder. Harlow went cold. Sienna. Sienna was never after your husband, Preston said. She saw what he chases. She knows the whole merger runs on the Kessler Trust. She wants to sit next to the man who sits next to that money and steer it herself. A dying wife with a baby in her arms is a lot harder to erase than a dying wife alone. A pause. There's one more thing they don't know. If a court declares you unfit before the investors gather, your standing as successor can be legally challenged. Pray they never find that out. The mistress was never a mistress. She was a rival playing a longer game than any of them. When do the investors gather? The Vantage Gala. 9 days out. Same night your husband plans to announce the merger to the room. Harlow almost laughed. The stage where Bryce meant to become somebody was the exact room where her father had written her to take it all back. Then we have 9 days, she said. She stopped being quiet in the way they expected. She didn't shout. She gathered the certified forgery. The bank records showing Ashcroft's money moving underneath Bryce's deal. Sienna's post, time-stamped against the custody filing. Then she found the last piece, right where no one thinks to look. Nadia, the house cleaner, came twice a week and saw everything. Miss Harlow. She held both her hands. The day they moved that girl in, his mother and Sienna packed your things a full week before. They sold your bedroom furniture before you ever came home from the hospital. I heard them on the phone with the movers. Her mouth tightened. They planned it while you were still asleep in your own bed. Harlow went very still. The eviction was never grief. It was scheduled. She wrote it down and stopped being afraid of any of them. 2 nights before the gala, Bryce crouched beside her mattress, almost gentle. That was how she knew he wanted something. Sign the custody papers, Harlow. In your condition, you can't raise a kid. Be reasonable. A clean break is kinder for everyone. She looked at the man she'd once held through his worst nights. You forged my signature, Bryce. You cut off my treatment, so I'd die faster. Grief makes people imagine things, he said, smooth as glass. No one's going to believe a dying woman over me. You're probably right, she said, and signed nothing. He left certain he'd won. He always mistook her calm for surrender. He had no idea what she was carrying into that gala. Not the baby. The truth. The night of the gala, Harlow finally opened her father's envelope. 1 page, his careful handwriting. My girl, if you're reading this, they've shown you who they are. Good. Now you know too. Everything I built so no one could ever throw you away. You were never small. They just needed you to believe it. Walk in. Stand up. Say your name. I've got you even now. She pressed it to her chest. She didn't cry. She put on her one good dress, tied a clean scarf over her bare head like a crown, called a car, and went to take back what was hers. The Vantage Gala glittered. Bryce stood at the front, Sienna and Silver at his side. Debbie and Peyton sipped champagne near the stage. He took the microphone and painted a future of the merger that would redefine everything. And none of it, he said, beaming, would be possible without our financing partner, Ashcroft Capital, and the Kessler Trust behind it. Tonight, we celebrate a new beginning. He said her father's name like it belonged to him. That was when the doors opened. Harlow walked in, bald head high under her scarf. The room turned. A murmur rippled through it. Some of these investors had known Walter Kessler personally. 2 of the oldest men rose to their feet the second they saw her face. Bryce's smile froze. Harlow, this is a private event. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Her voice was quiet, and the quiet made the whole room lean in. You just said a name, Bryce. The Kessler Trust. Do you want to know who holds it? He said nothing. Preston Duke stepped in behind her, calm, a folder in hand. For the investors present. the named successor of the Kessler Trust, which controls Ashcroft Capital, the financing without which this merger does not close. Mrs. Harlow Kessler. The murmur turned into a roar. Harlow looked out at her father's investors and claimed it aloud, exactly as he'd written. My name is Harlow Kessler. My father, Walter Kessler, built Ashcroft Capital. He left it all to me. She let the room breathe once. I'm the woman behind the money my husband has begged for all year. I'm the person he threw into a garage while I fought cancer. The room made a sound like the air leaving it. Bryce went gray. You can't. I already have. She didn't raise her voice. As of tonight, Ashcroft withdraws its approval. There is no merger. Not through you. Not ever. Debbie pushed forward, her polite voice turning into a blade. This is a stunt. She's sick. She's confused. She has no standing. About my standing. Harlow turned to the room. My husband filed for sole custody of our unborn child, to have me declared unfit before tonight. He needed me erased. He just never knew what tonight was. Preston opened the folder. He also forged my signature to cut me from the insurance paying for my cancer treatment. Here's the form, in his own handwriting. Here are the bank records. She looked straight at Bryce. And here's the receipt showing my bedroom furniture was sold a full week before I came home from the hospital. The night you put me in the garage wasn't grief, Bryce. It was scheduled. The room went silent as a church. Every clean break, reasonable voice in it had nothing left to stand on. The facts sat on the table, and the facts didn't care how kind the cruelty had sounded out loud. Harlow didn't gloat. She let them look at what they'd done. That was the first blow. The second came from the one person nobody was watching. Sienna had gone very still. When Bryce reached for her hand, she pulled it back. She stepped forward, chin up. For the record, she said, clear enough for the whole room. The custody filing was Bryce's idea. The forged insurance form was his. He asked me to help make his wife disappear quietly so his deal could close. I have every email. She looked at Harlow, not with warmth, but with something close to respect. I was going to use all of it. I won't pretend otherwise. But I'm not going to prison for his crimes. She set her phone on the table, emails open, every instruction in Bryce's own words. Forgery and fraud, confessed and documented in front of 100 witnesses. Bryce stood alone in the center of the room. He'd wanted to rule it. His mother stepped back from him. His sister set down her glass and wouldn't meet his eyes. He'd built his whole life to matter to these people. In one night, in front of every one of them, he became the smallest man in the room. You were dying, he said, to no one. I thought you were dying. I might be, but I'm not gone, and I was never yours to throw away. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She turned and walked out, and the whole room watched the woman they'd pitted leave as the most powerful person in it. The merger collapsed within the week. The forged insurance form went to prosecutors, and a fraud charge went with it. The custody filing died the moment the world learned who Harlow Kessler truly was. Bryce lost the deal, the house, and the name he'd traded his wife for. Debbie and Peyton found doors quietly closing all over the city. Sienna's emails kept her out of a cell, but no firm would ever hire her again. Harlow didn't spend her days watching them fall. She had better things to build. The pregnancy held. Against every odd, so did she. That winter, her scans came back with one word worth more than any fortune. Remission. With Ashcroft in her hands, she did what her father had trusted her to do. She built the Walter Kessler home, a clinic and shelter for women fighting illness alone. Women whose families walked out the moment they got weak. Women who, like her, had been mistaken for nothing, right up until the moment they stood up and said their name.